Welcome or welcome back. This video is going to feature a topic that is a bit heavy compared to just most art commentary videos, but before we get into that, I wanted to talk about a meta attribute of this video. For people who are not new to digital art, this is going to sound really familiar. You know how newcomers always ask a set of questions, and among them there is a really frequent and a little bit funny one, that is the question, what brushes do you use? I'm actually planning to make a video about pretty much everything I personally know about brushes and kinda explain why this question is actually the wrong question people ask about brushes. Technically, I have a complicated answer, but I really feel that there is a much more simple and common answer that is going to work perfectly for 9 out of 10 people when they start out. And it is, use the basic round brush. And for a little advanced advice, use the basic round brush with a hard edge and the same with a soft edge, also known as the airbrush for most softwares. And I just randomly decided to make this picture with a round brush, and let me show you the exact way I set that up. The brush I'm using is one of the built-in brushes in Krita, which is the Ink 4 Pen Rough. Originally this had this auto tip, which is technically the basic round brush, but I changed it to this one, which is one of the basic watercolor brush tips, but you really won't see any difference in it. I just like having this turned on for, like, you know, that extra 0.1% difference in the end. And I have the size change based on pen pressure. You can modify this graph in Krita for your liking. I'm pretty sure that most art programs have something similar to this. Also, I have the opacity and the flow similarly set up. I could actually switch to this circle tip that is going to pretty much look the same. And now I can demonstrate that this brush is pretty much more than enough for anything that you want to paint. And it's actually good for drawing as well. It works a lot like some basic ink pen. Aside from a few little tweaks, I made this entire picture with the round brush, and for those who don't know, it's almost like a little meme or challenge among digital artists. To use the round brush for an artwork, it's a bit like the no undo challenge or the one layer challenge or paint with the mouse or paint in MS Paint. I actually did some stuff in MS Paint lately with the Windows XP version on top of everything, and I want to make a video about that as well. I feel half of this video is just me telling what sort of videos I'm planning, so let's move on. I was hesitant whether or not I should include this following part in a video, but for me these recordings are somewhat of a time capsule, and what I aspire to make is something relatable and something that can speak to people more than just some surface level art video, and I feel that this is something I'm supposed to mention here. So if someone looked at my paintings recently, they might have guessed that I haven't been feeling well lately. And I'm not the only one, but I can only speak about myself. And this painting was so simple, I couldn't have used the recording for other purposes really, so here we go. This mindset has been present in my works for some time now, and it will for the unforeseeable future. I won't go into details because it would result in me putting together an hour-long speech about end-stage nihilism and similar goofy things, so I'd rather focus on what I made instead as a response to these feelings. Strange, but I found some fascinating amount of productivity in the act of making pictures that feature sadness and grief, mostly in the form of crying people, but that's obviously just a surface level. Today's picture is pretty much part of an untitled series of people grieving over something or someone, while the outside force that caused certain terrible events is nowhere to be seen in the compositions. This one here is a painting that was even more random than most of my works. I just literally sat down with an idea that I had about 5 minutes before I started and just kept working on it, with the idea that I just wanted to use the round brush because I haven't used it in a while. Now that I'm talking about this topic of struggling through certain times and making art, not necessarily to get you anywhere or to make yourself feel better, but simply as just a reaction to events that are unfolding outside your reach, because that's what creative people do. We just make things, often without a greater purpose, even if it doesn't seem to be the case for outside viewers. At least in my case, that's true. I remember this video on Proko's channel from a few years back when he talked with Kim Jung-gi, who sadly passed away a few months ago. I didn't rewatch the video for writing this script. I'm afraid I'd get lost in emotions and never finish writing this down, but there was a line by Proko, something about Kim Jung-gi drawing like he's just breathing. It's just as natural of a process that he does without even second guessing himself. He just draws. Drawing is breathing. I'm like 95% sure that was an actual line in the video. Drawing is breathing. If creating is like breathing for many of us, then it's just an expected thing that our breathing is influenced by things we hear and feel about. That might have been a really butchered sentence, but I like it, so it stays. And as poetic it might sound, or it maybe just sounds extremely tryhard, if your breathing gets heavier, your heart rate gets faster, and your brain is working overtime to fuel your anxiety, sometimes the best thing you can do is to use that extra oxygen and extra pressure and rage to your advantage. That's what I've been doing, at least, making the things I felt like making, no matter how others will react. I won't start censoring myself just because the subjects in my head are not pleasant enough for some mandatory happiness quota. Also, being proactive in trying out new things is a surprisingly uplifting and productive experience. I mentioned that I got into Microsoft Paint a little bit, but I'm in the process of working on other digital art things, including but not only this image where I restricted myself to a rather basic tool. I also recently started traditional drawing. I've been using graphite and a little bit of charcoal, and my drawings are far from really being presentable to my standards. I felt a great amount of joy in working on paper, and I honestly feel that I improved in digital works as well as a result of stepping out of this comfort zone of ones and zeros. It really brings you into a different mindset where every single little motion matters, and I don't think I've ever felt so focused while making an image in years. Maybe I've never felt this before. Digital is still my favorite. I do think that it is objectively the most free medium and the one where you absolutely have the most agency over your work and where your possibilities are the greatest, even if it sometimes means that the simplicity of something like a single grayscale portrait feels anticlimactic and just not good enough for the imaginary standards we set for ourselves. Traditional really felt like a test of patience and skill, a test that I'm failing miserably now with most of my drawings, but guess what? Failing every time is an amazing experience where you always learn that you did something wrong, and because of the limitations of the medium you are really forced to think about these shortcomings and absorb the lessons through your mistakes like a sponge. At least that's how I feel right now. One double-edged sword of digital is that if you have a hard time letting go of failed artworks, you can really fall into a trap of trying to rework them over and over again instead of taking more cautious steps all the way through and complete the whole piece according to your best abilities for the first try. Did I just turn this whole script into sharing my experience about drawing? I feel like I clickbaited you into watching a video about the round brush, and then I got lost in my own monologue. dear two people who are still listening to me. Now let me really quickly show you the end of the process where I used some filter layers to add some blur to the edges of the image and some extra saturation to some parts. For some reason I tried adding some chromatic aberration because of course that's what this picture needs. Chromatic aberration. What else? So I dropped the idea, then we have the final image. And I thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day. Do some art, even if it involves painting some strangely uncomfortable scenes that just want to be painted or drawn and brought into existence by any means. But most importantly, have fun while doing that. Farewell.